Hello, this is Pixie doing a video. There we go. And I'm going to probably talk about some yoga experiences. So I do some yoga meditation. Some people think yoga is just physical forms and transitions. In fact, that is a kind of yoga in that your mind connection to your body. And so for this system, it's an internal system I practice. So there's lots of different types of yoga, but they're all working towards some form of unity. Internally, you can do a lot of work with your body. So like tension in your spine's released. So you're going to go to what's somewhat like your normal state, I guess. Regulatory state where your body maintains itself in a certain way. It's interesting, the driving. But there's some interesting stuff that's come into my mind. There's a few things. So today I went and meditated, and it was probably at a level higher than I've done before, in that there was more energy points in my body that were activated. Now I'm kind of sensing, like if you project your mind and you focus on, say, the tip of your finger, you may feel a sort of tingling sensation if you just constantly focus on that bit of your finger, and it's because you've kind of increased a nerve pulse there, so the energy to that finger is increased, and you'll have that sensation, so the feedback. So it's like you've amplified your nervous system at that point. And so I'm having that at certain points around my body, and it resonates. So if I feel it in one area of my body, it starts to influence other areas of the body. You know, the longer you do it, you can get a certain depth of the feeling it builds up. And to be effective, you need at least half an hour meditation. However, you could do it any period of time. You know, there are no set rules. So for some people, they may be already pre-meditating before they meditate, before they decide to. It's kind of like in your deeper root of your consciousness, you've decided to do something. Like you've decided, say you used to go and reward yourself in some way, your body will prepare yourself for that. So you wake up early, or you'll be in a really good mood, and all sorts of things, because your body's prepared yourself for that experience, and spiritually you may have prepared yourself, and then also mentally as well. So there's lots of things you would have done prior to the event occurring. So, and for me, I have these different energy points I'm working on, and I'm also working on a meditative healing through heartfulness, which is the meditation style, Raga Yoga. So I just had this car flying up the back, police car. It's all going. It's like, what's happened? Oh, it's a red light. So, what I had today is, so I had these different energy points are active, because the idea is you focus on your heart, and then from your heart it powers the rest of your body. So it's your main power cell. However, there's quite unique properties to the heart that may correlate to other areas of your body, like your empathy and feelings and resonation of life force, I guess, comes through. There's a pulse in your heart, and that comes through your life force. There's kind of a field of energy that's pulsing, and it also stimulates other people around you. It's one of the reasons why when you've got little babies, you hug them, or you hug people you love, or you get them close to your heart, because they kind of benefit from your feelings of warmth and intention. And in the same way that possibly if you had an aggressive thought, that you might bring someone close to your heart. You know, people get bear hugged and stuff like that. The body has a close contact with the assailant, let's say. So yeah, different levels and different ways of using body contact, energy-wise. So it's been kind of deeper. There's a few things else that I've learned, and which I think are important. So I saw a dragon in there, and it would be a form of angel. So it's because lots of people think of angels and might think of them as human forms, but it's also like an archangel. So it's above. It's quite high. I can't say it's like high, but it's over. Maybe it's over branching. Maybe some lower order if there is that kind of matriarchy there. But I think maybe closer to God, you would possibly be less human in form, possibly. But that may be my own view. In the same way, some people do the reverse, is they might believe the more human you are, the more godlike you are, because they feel that the image of God in some way is a man. But yet the man is just the machine, really, the vehicle for the consciousness. So it's but it enables us to take on the manifestations of what a God would do with regards to being able to construct and make things and build things. So that's kind of one level of importance. But the dragon told me that you're practicing Enochian fire, and you're basically charging up your energy and you're raising your frequencies around your body. So he called it Enochian fire. Or he showed me a technique I could tap into. And basically the dragon's breath, because most people think of the fire as destructive, he was using it as like a life force. So he was like using the frequency of energy to heal. And I concentrated on that, and I felt the whole body, it's like a cleansing ritual. The whole of my being, like I was just on fire. And everything negative was just getting burnt out of my body. So that's an interesting technique, sort of like an elemental cleansing, spiritual, even if it's just a supposition, an abstract correlation in my mind. What you believe in your mind exists outside of your mind as well as it exists inside. So the physical manifestation, like if you're very happy, your hormones and your biology will reflect that. Equally, if you're very unsatisfied inside or depressed or whatever, that will be have an external manifestation on the people around you, society, etc., but also conditions of your body and well-being in itself. So that was one element, this Enochian fire. So maybe there are kind of like techniques, spiritual techniques as well. So visualising that. Because if I had a fear of fire, then it wouldn't be a good idea. Like in the same way, if I cleansed myself with water and I was afraid of drowning or hydrophobic in some way or something like that, that wouldn't be a good ritual of, to heal, I guess, and relax. And the other thing is the abundance of alien consciousness. So when these energy points in your body come in line, they also reflect. They tell me it's kind of like little ripples in your consciousness. In the same way, in your brain, it's got lots of different neural networks. But it was telling me that some of the aliens that people experience or believe they experience are internal. Well, that's basically internal aliens. So when people think they're getting abused by greys, it could be there's a psychic manifestation of their own consciousness. So the reason they can't see it, and no one else can see it, is because it's inside them. It just seems to be affecting them at some other level, like another dimension. It could be that the very person's people have auric fields at a certain frequency, so these manifestations, if they're kind of downloaded into their consciousness, or as another being that's doing it, or they just live inside them anyway, but they might live elsewhere as well. So it's like we're kind of a gateway to a universal consciousness. When you give someone an ability, energy-wise, I think you create the bridge between the source and the receiver. So to explain that, it was like if I'm using the internet and I use Wi-Fi, the signal may come from like a server through this Wi-Fi hub, and it links up to my laptop. But there's nothing to stop something else hacking into that signal, or that signal being picked up by other things, or a program existing, in that field of energy, so it kind of sustains it at some level. So these beings don't exist in the material world because they're ethereal in nature, and they're also mental constructs of humans as well. So people might be seeing themselves in it. And equally for when people think they're being raped, or they're having alien children, these don't have to be actual physical manifestations. It could be that there's something taken from them in a different form. But people want physical manifestations because they say that's evidence. If they get markings on their body, they say there's something actually happened. But they can't. If someone's behaviour changes, or they feel a different way, and I think people might not be able to measure that, so they say that's not evidence. There's too much variation of variables. But equally, you could get an injury and it might turn up days later. So they're still variables. It's just that it may adhere to a conclusion around evidence, or an expectation of perception. So it's very interesting. I tell you what's very interesting. I meditate, and my consciousness shifts and it changes. Like at the moment, I feel slightly like a different person, which may sound a bit unusual, but it's also the fact that these other conscious entities are streaming into me. So I'm not just limited to. I'm not limited to the brain I have in my body, and that the mind and its consciousness is shifted into my being, my soul. I mean, maybe possibly the bigger picture. If there's not really limitation. I'm thinking about soulmates. There is possibly a way to create a soulmate by transferring some of your conscious energy into a person. You have a strong connection. But the only thing is, if for some reason you split off from this other person, just get some coffee, you will still be connected to them. And I'm kind of having that as well. There's other things that go on with meditation. So maybe the aliens that people see are actually just internal ones, and reflective. Maybe they can project them into the universe and exist. Let's say you're a very powerful consciousness, like you're a god, but you want to play a game, and so you've created this game, but you decided to give yourself a handicap. So you've decided to remove your memory of how the rules work and the game works. So it's like the game master in some of these Dungeons and Dragons. It already knows what's going to go on, but you don't. And you have to use your other skill sets to do that. And you need to do that so you can develop them as well. So you have the use of them. So if people are creating their own inner demons or angels, they're projecting them into their own world to encounter. And they can't manifest on other people, because unless they actually believe them, they're not going to let them in. And so that's that conscious barrier. It's the same way as, I'll go back to the computer scenario, it's like a firewall. It's not allowing that information to come across, or the cookies, or whatever that you download and attach. People, you could say the cookies for, say, Christianity is that maybe the devil knows your intentions or has an influence over you, and that's because you've put the paradox of good and evil. Well, it might be more like light and dark, order to chaos, and the transitions between the two. The longer you keep something in chaos, the more evil it may be seen. Or in order. If you force something to follow an order it doesn't need to exist, then that's seen as evil. So there's much more in there spiritually. So when I go into meditation, I best not to have any preconcepts, but be aware of any subtle improvements or changes, because they will kind of enrich your experience. So before I go to meditation, I try to open up these energy points. I sense them. I sense where they are. That's all I'm doing. And neurologically, I'm just sensing them because they're always there. But I'm trying to make myself more sensitive to the experience. In the same way as you might clear your mind for, I don't know, so you're going to do a presentation. You're not going to bombard yourself with other information and work and stresses. You're going to have push that away because you don't need that at that particular time. There's a time and a place for things to occur. So yeah, and the other thing I'm doing about healing, so where I've got injuries, so the prime goal when you get heartfulness is that you're concentrating on your heart, and you're doing it in a subtle way, you're not trying to force it. However, sometimes it's tempted to push it because you want results, or you're looking for what else is there, and these sorts of things you're exploring. We're taking on an adventure, and the mindset affects if you're competitive, then maybe you will push yourself a little bit. As for me, I'm trying to multitask by concentrating on the heart, but also connecting to areas of my body as well. So I think it's chromosome 16. There's an issue there potentially, and it will affect my guts. And I've been doing things like fasting and so on to control that, but I need to go beyond that because it pushes back. Because there's an intelligent system in there, and if it's got a flaw in it, it's still repeating that behaviour. It's like it's doing things against my will in some ways, or just trying to attune myself to sensing it. But chromosome 16 also affects other things, like personality and potentially, there's things like autism, potentially chromosome 16. They potentially say things like schizophrenia. So it's an abnormality that your body may try to correct, and by doing it, it may create a new problem potentially. So it's about, for me, alignment and maintaining alignment. So that's part of the healing. So I've been focusing on that and anything else in my body. And the difficult thing is with these energy points is that if it's past areas that you've had injuries and things, that your perception of these areas, your focus. Yes. Brilliant. So that worked. Just driving along, it's like everything's clicking in place. And actually, my perception of sight was a bit different today as well. Coming out of it, I felt like I was overcharged a little bit of energy. So I've taken that, and it feels like blood pressure has increased in my brain. So like the muscles, so like the workout. This is the lactic acid that I'm having neurologically from. So where it's been worked, it's just relaxing now. So I'm not trying to use my brain. But there's a deeper root of consciousness. Like when I'm driving, I'm not thinking about it. Maybe people are thinking about it, but it's actually it's a subtle thing that's been coming across into my body. It's just like I'm driving home, but I'm not really thinking about it, to be honest. But equally, I need to be aware of it, otherwise I might go off somewhere else. I might be thinking about buying something, I might start driving towards that area or that thing I'm attracted to. So it's a very interesting journey. So it'd be very interesting it'd be interesting. Somebody. It's because if these aliens exist in someone, so someone who's an abductee or believes they are, and they're probably an abductor, they're kind of creating this energy for this being to exist, and whether they do exist outside in another dimension, but they're pulling them through in some way, or they're constructing them themselves like they're a virus or something, or maybe they're not. Maybe they're a tool that hasn't been utilised. You just left it there and it hasn't done anything, so it's gone off and gone rogue. So, I mean, not all things. That's why some people have positive experience with aliens and negative ones, because they either say, well, we're related to them, because it's more of an inner alchemy or transformation of their own psychology. You know, maybe they are made out consciously of different things they eat as well. When you eat things, if all things are conscious, and say all things are created fair, then if I eat an animal or a plant or anything biological, that some of that consciousness may be coming across, and it may be very subtle, but that animal has become a part of my own soul, and that's what I tend to embrace. I embrace things like that. You know, it's like I want to develop spiritual relationships with entities in order to understand them, and they can understand us. You know, because there may be this us and them scenario, or they are aware of some of our intentions, but they think maybe they're petty or they're limited. You know, like some people are just thinking about money or sex or whatever, but they think, well, is that all you're interested in? Or do they, you know, do these humans know that they're just playing out this in this dimension, and that most of the things they think are real and don't exist? They just create them to exist in their reality. So I need to get a chart on some chakra points, so I can look carefully at where they are and possibly what they mean as well. And that's the experiment. The experiment isn't to disclude anything or to try to prove, but more to experiment what exists. That's the same with myth. If myth says that something existed, then you think, well, how would it possibly would exist? And also, if it's an interpretation of that experience, so they might be more open to other things, you know, that potentially may be happening there. And it's a sort of area for further development, and that's why this type of yoga is. It's not trying to take you somewhere particular. It's like self-discovery, and the group work powers you up as well. And I have not a clue what happens if I'm in a large room of people resonating at a certain frequency, but I'm just going to go for it. So if I can open up new energy points, I will. However, the effect of that is like me going for a sprint. Everyone's jogging, and I've decided to try to run ahead of the group. The energy's there, basically the wind current's in their favour, but they're doing what they need to do at their own pace, which is fine. I'm giving it a quick, and what happened probably, like most people, I sprinted, then I'd be slowing down below their speed, or just, you know, go down to a lower jogging pace, I guess, into recovery mode. Yeah, otherwise it takes a while to realign your mind. You've blown your mind away. That's just no one else behind you. So yeah, some old boy walking across the road. So anything else I've used that I need to share? I think these inner aliens is definitely an interesting concept, because it doesn't disclude it as being real, but maybe they need to reassess what they are. You know, what we are as a people. Are we just simply this biological organism, or is that just like one dimension? Because, you know, the atomic universe is like one dimension. So if you try to explain biological life forms to something, say it was just made out of elements, it would say, well, these things don't exist. We're great, you know, but that'd be really confusing to explain that. But if you was kind of, you know, like a kind of a computer view in the outside world, when it says, well, everything that's created is inside me, nothing exists outside of me, because it can't see that. So it's limited to the perception, but the mental perception isn't limited. And so these kind of contrasts of two areas, and for a God entity, this is kind of a massive step forward as well. What you're learning and what you're uploading is very valuable to that being, because he might be doing things that haven't been done before and not even realise. Which might sound, well, how's that possible? come on man, just stop. Some blooming car whizzing down the road. Very much so, because it might be a slightly different scenario. Most people follow patterns of behaviour, but if you spiritually develop a deeper inner connection, then that ripple effect has an effect as well. And there's always that, they call it the 12 monkey experiment, where the consciousness of the monkey was upgraded because it was taught new skills, and instantly these new skills were transferable. And then there's also the direct influence, whereby someone that has a skill, the mother can teach it to the children, like sign language with apes, to its young. It obviously thought it was important to share this information with it, that it now understands the value of a language system. But if you let that in the wild, what on earth would happen would, if something's either be rejected by the herd, or it would slowly transform the herd into something else. Where do I want to go? Anyway, this is Peter signing off, and I will speak to you again. Bye.